Welcome. I'm Steve Peters, and we are sitting in a studio, Weston, West Virginia. We're talking with veterans. And the veteran this evening that we're going to talk to is Frank L. Craig. Now with me is my co-host. His name is John Brooks. John, welcome. Frank, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, that's a nice sunny day, Steve, and we do have not only a guest today, we have a distinguished guest. Frank Craig is a retired Sergeant Major from the Army who had a distinguished career. We talked with Frank Pearl Harbor Day last year, if you recall, but we didn't have time to get some background on Frank, and that's what we need to have today. Frank, again, welcome to WHAW, and tell us about yourself, your home, your family, and so forth.
Thank you very much. I am a Montgomery County boy. I was born in Sliding Run, 1922. My father was John Craig. My mother was Lovey Amos Craig. We were very poor. Of course, everybody was in those days. My father worked for the state road and eventually got killed on the state road in 1930. I was 8 years old when he got killed. And of course, we had a hard time from then because my mother had 7 children. There were 7 of us remained in the family at that time. And the oldest one was 16, and the youngest one was about 8 months old. So
how far up Sliding did you live, Frank?
1.25 miles up Sliding Run.
So you didn't live at the bottom of the hill, you lived up there in the middle of about Montgomery Town.
No, we lived a mile. That's about 2 miles up Sliding Run, or
okay.
3, yes. The Montgomerys lived up there, yes. We, at the time my father died, got killed, we lived at Sand Fork. And he was working on a state road on that rock quarry just below Sand Fork. And he was running a jackhammer and fell off balance and fell off of a rock cliff there where he was running a jackhammer, and eventually died.
That's down there on the straight? That's at Sand Fork? Did you attend the University of Sand Fork?
I attended the University of Sand Fork, but not very long.
So did I. I'm a Sand Forker too.
Yeah.
Well, where did you? How long did you attend the University of Sand Fork?
I went 1 year high school, and from that I decided that I'd had enough of farming, and because I really didn't have a whole lot of chance, I had to of a spring put the crop out and of a fall take it in, and I missed a lot of school, and I wasn't the most popular student in Sand Fork High School, I'll tell you. So I decided I would much rather do something else, and that's where I departed familyship and went in the Army.
Well, the day you signed, where did you sign up at to go to the Army?
Okay, I lived in Sliding Run, up in Sliding Run, and I hitchhiked to Clarksburg and enlisted in the Army. At that time I was 17 years old, and of course I had to bring papers back to my mother to sign and so forth, so I had to go back, went out and got the papers and come back one day and went back the next day and enlisted in the Army.
Back to your family for just a minute, Frank, if you don't mind.
Okay.
What were your brothers and sisters' names?
My oldest sister was Cynthia Craig. She married a Smarr. She married James Smarr. My second sister was Madeline Craig, and she married a Shiflett. Then the next one was Evelyn, and she married a Radcliffe. And then I was the middle child, and I married a girl from Weston after World War II, Norma Wright. My brother was the next child in line, and Ivan Craig, and he lives in Weston. He married a Jean Smith. And my next sister, Ava Craig, she married Joe Wines from Clover Fork. And my youngest sister, was Frida Rose Craig, and she, her first husband was a James, and the next one was a Pusey, Eddie Pusey, an Italian boy from Cleveland. I have to think about all these now, you know. Then I think the next one was a Bates, and then a Fuquay, and that's where she ended up. But yeah, I think she's married 5 times, I think.
She was a veteran herself, wasn't she?
Huh?
She was a veteran herself,
all the way, buddy, I tell you.
Of the
But
matrimonial
anyhow,
wars.
she's deceased, and there's only 4 of my original family children left as far as my immediate family. That's my sister in Clover Fork, Ava, and Ivan lives here in Weston. And my oldest sister is 87 years old, and she lives in Florida with her daughter over in Ruskin, around Ruskin, Florida. And then, of course, me, I live here in town, and we're fixing to move to Florida.
And you mentioned your brother lives on Broad Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Ivan Craig lives on Broad Street.
What about your siblings? How many children do you have?
I have 5 children, and they're all in Orlando, Florida. That's the gimmick of going to Florida. It's not a pleasure move, I assure you. It's something that old Father Times tells you better do something, and that's about where we're at.
What's their names? What's your children's names?
I'm going to get to that here. My oldest daughter is an RN. She originally married Roger Montgomery from Weston. They raised 3 children and 3 boys. And right now she is remarried. Her husband died about 6 or 7 years ago. I don't know when it was. But she remarried, as a matter of fact, a couple of times. She is now living in Florida with her current husband in Lake Mary, Florida. My next child is Carl Michael Craig, and he is a retired Air Force sergeant, master sergeant. He also owns a tree business in Florida, which is a very good money-making job. And he got out of the service and after 23 years and came to Orlando and bought a tree business. So he's running a tree business in Florida. And then my next son also is in the tree business. He's been in the tree business in Orlando for 35 years. And he works, he's called semi-retired. He works 2 or 3 days a week and fishes the rest of the time. And then I have 2 daughters, 2 younger daughters. Tina Louise Craig, she married a Bryant. And they had 1 child, a daughter by the name of Heather, and she lives in Orlando, and so does Tina. Tina and the Bryant are divorced, and she became a foster parent of all the things. But, and my youngest daughter is a real estate agent in Orlando, Florida, and she she has 2 children, and they're divorced. Her and her husband is divorced, and she's is a real estate agent, so I don't think I'll have any problem finding a house.
Frank, it sounds like Orlando may have to put a sign up for an annex called Craigtown.
They're all down there, and that, like I say, that this is not a pleasure move. It's not one of those things, oh boy, I'm going to move to Florida, you know. It's something that we're almost at our age. My wife is 73 years old, and I'm 80, and it's just something that we need, I think, to do.
Well, you had your home near Weston, the Jacksonville area.
Jacksonville, yes.
For how many years, Frank?
14 years. I lived there 14 years. I lived in Orlando, Florida before. It's nothing new to me. I lived there for 22 years. After I retired from the Army, I came back here and went to work for the State Road and worked for the State Road for a couple of years, I think it was. It's about time they started the interstates through Weston, okay? And I really didn't like it very well, so I went to Florida on vacation and got a job over at the Cape and never did come back. So I just moved my family down there, and my last 3 children graduated from high school in Orlando. My first 2 graduated here. My oldest boy graduated from high school in June and went directly into the service the next week into the Air Force and put 23 years in. So that about covers my children, is what I have, what they've done, and who they are.
Go back to the day that you went into the service.
Okay. Well, I went in the service because, like I say, I just felt like farming was not my bag. I just didn't care about it. It was probably a selfish thing as far as I'm concerned. I look back at it now because I was the oldest boy in the family.
How old were you then, Frank? 17?
17 years old. It was a selfish thing, I suppose, but my mother agreed to it and signed the papers for me. And as I say, I had to go to Clarksburg to enlist. I went down and enlisted and got on the scales, and I think the weight limit was 115 pounds at that time. I'm not sure, but anyhow, I was 3 pounds short. And so the recruiter said, go down to this corner down here and the fruit stand, and the fruit stand's still down there by the post office, and get you 3 pounds of banana and a pint of chocolate milk and drink them. And he said, don't stop at the bathroom coming back either. So I did. You come back, and I got on the scales, and I weighed what I was needed to be, just to cover him is what it was, because, that's the way it is.
So you ate 3 pounds of food?
Yeah, and went right straight up and got on the scales, and he said I weighed enough. So I went from there to Columbus, Ohio, Fort Hays, and was sworn into the Army at that time. And I was sworn into the Army, by the way, with a boy from Weston here, William Westfall from Weston, West Virginia, and he appeared in Ripley, believe it or not.
What for, Frank? What
Well,
did he
because his name was William W. Westfall from Weston, West Virginia.
WWWWW.
And, they thought it was comical, and they put it in, believe it or not, by Ripley. And but anyhow, from there, we were enlisted there, and they shipped us all, those that were going. I enlisted directly for Hawaii.
Now, what year is this?
1940. I enlisted for Hawaii. At that time, Hawaii was composed of 4 Army regiments. It made the Hawaiian Army Department. And I was assigned to the 35th Infantry, but how I got there was I went to Fort Hays, Columbus, Ohio there, and was sworn in, and I went from there to Fort Slocum, New York, which was an island there. And they issued us clothing. We had no military training whatsoever. I didn't know Jack from Jill as far as the military was concerned. But we got on a boat. We went to, I stayed there about 3 weeks, I think it was, 2 or 3 weeks. And we was waiting on a ship to come in. Well, the ship come in, and we went down to Brooklyn Army Base then and stayed 2 days, and was processed out of there onto the ship, the USS Shadow-Theria. And we went through the Panama Canal on into Hawaii. It was about a 35-day trip on a boat at that time. And
So you was going to pull your basic training in Hawaii?
at that time, you went, if you enlisted for an organization, or when you were assigned to an organization, that was your basic training. And we had, at that time, I had 3 or 4 old World War I sergeants, and they were anything but Christian, I can assure you. Every night they would go over to the Solid Port, what we call a Solid Port. They had a little beer garden in the quadrangle, and this old guy, Art Link Savage, he'd get drunk every night. One beer would make him drunk. He was that kind of a person. And he'd get all of us recruits around there, and he'd fill beer on the table, and he'd draw people, wet spots on the table, and make us try to get us to figure out how you're going to attack that place. And if you didn't do it right, he'd upset the table on you.
Isn't that funny how you remember those?
Oh, yeah, you remember this. In those days, military was not brains. It was bronze all the damn way, you know. I mean, that's the way it is. And there's no backing off about it. If you didn't do what somebody told you, they knocked you down the steps. My first sergeant did. To me, too. Because I was a little smart aleck.
So he whipped that out of you there, didn't he?
Real quick. Real quick.
What did you think when the first time when you realized that you had no control over what was going on there?
Well, if it was back in those days, you knew who had control, and you didn't. Because, you know, you see 2 or 3 people get the devil knocked out of them, you know, you're going to do what you're told to do. And people, you know, think, kids now think, well, nobody's going to tell me what to do. And back in those days, somebody would. And that was life. There's no two ways about it. You did not have control, and I guarantee you that.
What were conditions like on the ship, Frank, going from the New York area through the Panama Canal to Hawaii?
It was a cruise. It was to me it was heaven, you know, really was. I didn't get seasick only one time in my life, and that didn't have to be it. It was to me it was heaven because I was doing what I wanted to do. I was going, you know, somewhere that I'd never been. Who would have ever thought me, a little dumb thing like me, was going to go to Hawaii? You know, no way. You know, you couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
Huh?
From Sand Fork, no less.
Yeah.
And all expenses paid.
All expenses paid all the way. So I really enjoyed it. You know, like I tell people, I did what I wanted to do in my life. I made a fairly decent living. I obtained my goals in life. When I got out of the Army in 1945, I didn't want to get out. But I had enlisted in the Army, and I'd been gone 5 years and 4 months. Hadn't seen a family member in 5 years and 4 months from a 17-year-old boy. I was a little bit developed about that time, and, you know, it was just one of those things that I didn't want to get out of the Army, but I come back to Indiana when I was discharged from World War II, and I didn't want to get out. I wanted to stay in. They said, well, you have to go to your base and get a leave. And I said, ain't no dad going away. I've been going 5 years and 4 months. I'm going home. So that's what happened. But it didn't last long. I stayed out 2 years. I got married and went back in the Army. Lawrence Chapman re-enlisted me.
So where did you go back to, Sand Fork?
No, I came here to town. My mother had sold the farm and moved to town up on Buck Hill over there. And I sent her money along to help her along because that was the idea, you know. But anyhow, I came back here and I married a girl, my wife, and
Well, who was she? What was her maiden name?
Norma Wright. She's lived up on Buck Hill.
Just a few minutes ago, Frank, you mentioned the drill sergeant you had, the World War I veteran. You mentioned the Sally Port and the beer.
The beer garden.
I recall the way well, I saw some old wooden barracks in Hawaii, but
These weren't wooden. These are stone barracks.
Stone barracks?
In Hawaii. Oh, Lord, yes.
Now, was the Sally Port located on the side? And you had a little
underneath. Well, see, you got a square, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, this part over here is headquarters. Had various offices in it, and of course, the regimental commanders, the colonel, his offices there, and everybody. And he had headquarters company, 35th Infantry, okay? Then it was A, B, C, and D, okay? Then over here was the other four here, and then here was the last one, see? So you had a complete, and at each corner of that square, there's an entrance to it. And underneath of this headquarters here was where the headquarters building office was located was a little restaurant-like, you know, we get hot dogs or whatever, beer garden and whatever. Things were convenient. But then right over on the main drag here through Schofield, there was only one main drag through Schofield at that time. There was another, that was a big beer garden over there. So, you know, it was...
So your entire organization was formed around an enclosed area.
And in the center of that was a big, where we held parades and stuff like that, retreat and everything.
Was that called a quadrangle?
Quadrangle, right.
So all the companies, A, B, C, D companies was right there. That's what you was
all of them,
counting
all of them
off.
was right there.
And you was there in basic training during 1941, is that right?
1940.
Well, how did you happen to still be there when in 1941?
Well, that's where they were. That's where the regiment was stationed.
I see.
In Hawaii, they had, like I told you a little bit ago, they had 4 regiments. The 35th, the 27th, these are all infantry regiments. The 21st and the 19th Infantry Regiments. Now, let me explain what happened here when the bombs fell.
Okay.
When that happened, we were, at that time, we were all, as I said, Hawaiian Department. We were assigned to the Hawaiian Department. They had downtown, they had on the beaches, they had Schofield, they had Coast Guards. At that time, they had Coast Artilleries, is what we called them, not Coast Guard. They had Coast Artillery, which was Army. And they had coastal guns around around Hawaii. And big guns, At that time, they were big guns. And that was their purpose.
Well, was they expecting a war with Japan? Is that why those big guns were there?
Not at that time. Not at this time. It came later on, but this was just trying to explain to you what all these people, all these regiments then were broken down once the bombs started falling, and made a division out of it. They took the 35th and the 27th and brought a unit in from the States, a regiment in from the States, and made the 25th Infantry Division. They took the 19th and the 21st Infantry Regiment and brought a regiment in from the States and made the 24th Infantry Division. At that time, they didn't have, we didn't have much as far as military was concerned, but we built up fast.
He's saying that they wasn't really organized into fighting units
before
that time.
We were training as an individual. In other words, we were trained as the 35th Infantry, period. Okay? We were regimental. But, of course, we had an engineering unit. We had artillery units that supported us, which is, you have to have all these things to fight a war. But we weren't prepared for war, okay? Not at that time. We were just soldiers, and that's about it.
Frank, I need to clear something up in my own mind here. The 35th trained their own recruits.
Sure. Like I said, you were stationed I was stationed in I Company 35th. I was assigned to I Company 35th Infantry.
Okay, now, how did they keep the seasoned or those who had completed their basic training, how do they separate those from those who were still in their basic training?
They didn't. You were separated over in the corner of a barracks, and everybody knew that NCO that had these recruits over here was little God, okay? Nobody got in that corner, I guarantee you.
Okay.
Anybody else, you don't get over in that corner. We were on the 3rd floor of the barracks, and we had if the company had recruits that come in on that boat and was assigned to that company, they had NCOs, 2 NCOs out there on the drill field with us. And we took our own basic training. Then we integrated into the regimental functional training, okay?
How often did a new set of recruits come in?
Well, it all depended. They come pretty often for a while, but it's just like anything else. If we lost 10 or 15 people, during the next 6 months, then we got them replacements. And they tried to it seemed like, and of course, if they came there in groups, they would leave in groups. So over a period of 2 years, this cycle would change again, you see.
That way you wouldn't be having the problem of training 1 or 2 people at a time. You can train them as a group.
That's the way it was.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it was. That's pretty smart in them days, too.
At some point, Frank, in 1941, even those of lower ranks, say PFCs, corporals, and 3-stripe sergeants, should have been having some idea that something might be happening before too long.
Well, I don't know how well you say that, because I never thought of war myself. I thought I was having a party.
Well, you were probably too busy having a good time.
Well, you mean, Frank, that you did not realize that December 7th was coming until that day?
Well, let me ask you a question. You think anybody in Washington realized it? If they had, we'd been better prepared, wouldn't we? Now, stop and think.
Well, there was a lot
It
of...
caught you completely off guard then.
Everybody was off guard. Whenever we're so stupid, I probably shouldn't say that, but I did.
No, I think that's the right word.
I don't know if you know what happened or not, but the fleet commander of the Pacific called all of his people in. Why do you think all these ships was lined up there? They called them in for a conference. They were lined up right there. You couldn't have dropped a bomb between them without blowing one up. That's how many ships there was in the harbor.
What was the conference about?
Don't know, I wasn't there. Don't ask me.
Okay.
But, I'm just trying to tell you that you say we didn't realize it. As far as I'm concerned, they didn't realize it.
Well, that was a question that I had for you. Just prior to December the 7th, 1941, let's say 2 or 3 weeks, Frank, did you detect anything going on?
Well, no, nobody
that brought up
detected it.
any kind of conversation among the troops?
No.
Everything
There was no
routine?
mention of the war,
Okay, with that being said, let's go to that morning, December the 7th.
Okay.
Tell us what you was doing.
Well, at that morning we got up, and at Sunday the barracks were laid out so that the kitchen was in the end, clear across your unit, okay? You went in through the back door on Sunday. They had 3 or 4 stoves set up there. You could get French toast, you could get scrambled eggs, you could get eggs over, you could get hash browns, you could get whatever, that they were having on the menu, but just tell them what you wanted and how you wanted it fixed. And you went in the back door of the kitchen and went through by the stoves and then into the dining room. In those days, mess halls were not like they are now. We went in to our normal meals, and we had a set table, just like you'd go home, okay, and your wife would fix a big dinner for somebody, okay? You just went in, sat down, and we had what we call dining room orderlies, and they would keep those dishes filled, and if you emptied a dish, you just held it up, and the dining room orderly would come and forget it and fill it. So that's the kind of a thing that we had during those days.
So you didn't walk through the chow line and serve yourself. You sat down, they brought the food to you?
Well, all but Sundays.
All but Sundays?
You didn't walk. You walked through the kitchen and got your chow on Sundays because you get it prepared the way you wanted it prepared.
Was it like a regular meal, or was it a long brunch? Did you have like 2 or 3 hours to go through?
No, it was just breakfast. And then we had dinner and so on.
So this would have been morning chow.
Morning chow.
December the 7th, 1941.
1941.
Had you gotten inside the mess hall yet?
No, I had not got in. And, the first thing we knew about it is we saw a plane coming, and that gook flew down through there. And you could see the sucker, And they really, after the first one or two went over, why, they put machine guns up on there, but a lot of the companies were in the position such as we were. Our supply sergeant lived off base, okay? So it took him 2 hours to come and open the armory up. They broke the lock off of the door to get the guns, to get ammo and all that. They had to, because he had the key. And the first sergeant lived off post, and there was nobody there but a bunch of peons,
Well, prior to seeing that Zero or Japanese bomber or what it was at Zero that flew over you all's head at the mess hall, had any of you seen or heard any of the explosions over towards?
Well, I don't remember all of that stuff. That's been quite a few days ago.
Well, yes, it has.
And I really don't remember all that stuff.
But you heard.
We knew. I suppose. Well, we knew it whenever the darn thing flew over us. That's for sure.
Well, was he firing his machine gun on you and bombing?
No, yes, he was firing, but he didn't hit anybody, so nobody got injured in that. But we had 2 or 3 waves of them. See, they come, and then Well, in Hawaii, they were attacking 3 or 4 different places, you know, at the same time. Yeah. And what they were doing that for is we have an airport right down by Pearl Harbor. Okay, we have one up at Schofield Barracks, and they just blowed the tar out of the hangars up at Schofield. They blow. We didn't get any planes up hardly at all. A couple of them, and we had a couple of them over in the back of the island. I think Bellis Isle, Bellis Field, or something like that. I don't remember for sure. But they got up, but I don't think they done much damage, you know, to them. But that's basically what happened that morning. And like I say, we didn't know as individuals. I probably wasn't smart enough to know what was happening anyhow, but.
Okay, that evening after it was all over with, and you was able to sit down and say something major has happened here.
Well, we didn't have to. We knew what the hell had happened then, you know, because once that thing, what had happened, why, you had each company and each battalion, rather, had a area assignment. In other words, this is our task. We have to do this. Ours was, because we were, had transferred to a heavy weapons company by that time, and a machine gun company. And what happened was that our regiment, our battalion was guarding what they called Red Hill, which was it was the ammunition depot, not only for the Army, but for the Navy and all those people. And that's where they got their ammunition when they come in. The ships came in there. But it was right, basically, in Honolulu, you know. And so our mission, as far as my company was concerned, was to patrol the bunkers in Red Hill with a machine gun. And that's what we done. As soon as that happened, why, we knew what was happening. And we knew what our assignment was. We'd practiced it before, you know, and all of the rest of it was dummy stuff. But we had the real McCoy this time, and we went down to the area and we was patrolling that, and that's the way it went.
Frank, you're standing in chow line. You see this Japanese plane coming over. Within seconds or even less, you know that it's something serious, that you're at war.
Well, we stand there looking at it like a bunch of dummies, and some officer up on the side port there said, "Get your over next to the building."
Well, there was no way to get ammo. You just said earlier that the guy who could get the ammo for you was off base, didn't come back for 2 hours.
They broke the locks off them.
So how long did it take for someone to say, "Let's break the lock"?
I don't remember, but I'm sure it wasn't. You know, they had some NCOs there that had a few brains, and they knew what was happening. That some of them had been through this thing before, been through war before. As I say, we had 3 or 4 sergeants that was during World War I, and so they knew what was happening.
What was your take on the Japanese?
Huh?
The average Japanese. What did you think about them?
What I think about them?
Yeah,
they were darn good soldiers. You know, and that's the way I look at it. As far as that's the only way I could look at them at that point. I don't have a whole lot of problem with the Japanese people, even though I fought them, killed them, and everything else. You know.
But you had respect for them as a soldier.
They were good soldiers.
They were disciplined.
Very disciplined. Very disciplined.
Did they take care of their own?
Well, I don't know about that. What you'd have to say, take care of their own. I don't really know whether they did or not, as far as feeding them and so on. They live, you know, those people could live on roots, you know, whatever, you know, just. And when my first combat was in Guadalcanal.
Well, staying on December the 7th for just a minute more. This was right around 8 o'clock in the morning when you're in the chow line, and this first wave of planes came over.
7-something. They started, I think, about 7:30 feeding.
And then you saw not only that first wave, but there was a couple of others.
Yeah, they came through too and done the same thing, strafed, you know. And by that time, they had some machine guns up on top of that. roof, you know, and there's flat roofs and so on. And we had machine guns up there.
The best you can recall, Frank, how long was it before you all were able to settle down to get some kind of a routine, take some kind of a reaction?
Well, it was not a matter of getting settling down. It was a matter of getting your equipment and getting your truck out, getting your machine guns out, and getting your squad out. As a squad leader, you know, I wasn't a squad leader then, but getting your people, if they weren't there, figured out where they were and getting them on the truck and going to your job, your mission.
That was about 2 hours.
Probably so. Well, I don't think we got down there till about noon. As far as that's concerned, and that was my best recollection of. We took us quite a while to load up and get down there.
You know, Steve and Frank, a lot of people, even today, see the Pacific Theater as the Marine Corps area of operations, the European Theater as an Army operation during World War II, but the Army played a huge role in the Pacific, a job that the Marine Corps could not have done by itself.
And that was?
The Army was all the way across Pacific, including Guadalcanal that Frank just mentioned. Frank, how about taking us up to Guadalcanal?
Well, we relieved the Marines in Guadalcanal, the 25th Infantry Division. At that time, they had pretty well the flat part of the operation mopped up, okay? In other words, all the Japanese were entangled up in the mountains of Guadalcanal and up, you know, it was quite mountainous, believe it or not.
Mountains like we've got up in the...
Well, I don't know if they are that much of a mountains like we've got in West Virginia, but they were mountains for islands. To me, they were mountains, okay? But we went up, my first night in combat, I was scared to death, naturally. But, you know, in the jungles, in those kind of jungles, they weren't cleared out. And it was almost as dark in the daylight as it was of a night over there in the jungles, in some of them jungles. The first night in combat, I was in a foxhole with a dugout there where they had, somebody had built it there before we got there. And there's 3 of us in there, and it was just dark as a dungeon, you know, and about midnight, man, and we heard a wham, you know, something fell out, something out in front of us, you know, and you couldn't see. All you could do is just get your gun and sit there in case something bumped into you, shoot him, you know. I'm not kidding you. That's what it was.
That's close combat.
And that's the way it was, you know. But it was what it was a big old dead log about 6 inches in diameter. A limb fell off, you know, and fell down there. That we realized what it was next morning, but it scared me to death, you know.
Did they relieve you the next morning, or was
Oh
you?
no.
So
we stayed there. We cleaned. We just went on. The next day, I had at that time, you know, they had the big old sloppy blues, right, for work clothes, and they were real sloppy, and you had a big pocket, and you know, at that time, when you go in combat, they give you a first aid pack, and it's about that long, about 6 or 8 inches long, and it was quite heavy. It had morphine in it, and had bandages in it, and mercurochrome, and all that stuff in it, you know. And I had it in my pocket like this, and we was crawling up with our rifles, you know. We was going up there and was going to take this pillbox up there. We knew where it was at. But about that time, boom, the bullet went through there like that, and didn't even hit the first aid pack, and didn't hit me. It went right underneath my arm and through there. Made a hole going in and coming out. My fatigues.
Did you dirty the fatigues?
Huh?
Did you dirty them fatigues?
No.
Okay.
Not really. You know.
Frank, prior to leaving Hawaii to go towards Guadalcanal, you probably received your mail on a regular basis and
Oh yeah.
typical routine and exchange of letters. How much did that change after you got to Guadalcanal? Were you still hearing from your family?
It didn't change. No, I tell you, I've always felt that, well, you know, at that time we were talking V-mail, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I remember that.
That's all you wrote was V-mail. And then it was just one piece of paper folded up. And they naturally transmitted it electronically to a certain area, to a certain APO, and then they printed it out for you. That's what it amounted to, see. And we got mail regularly, and in Guadalcanal, I wanted a banana cake. So I wrote my mom and my sisters, and I told them to bake me a banana cake and get one of those candy boxes, round candy boxes, you know, and put it in and so on. They did, and shipped it to me. But when they got there, them bananas was good and black, let me tell you right now, because it come by boat, you know. But I ate the cake anyhow. But
From Guadalcanal, where did you go?
well, Guadalcanal, we were sent there to clear up the island of Japanese. We did. We got that cleared up, and then we pulled back down on the flat spots, flat places, and we unloaded ships, and we done whatever was to do as military, building roads and so on, whatever, you know, helping that stuff, and guarding all these things. We stayed there a few while, you know. Then we went to New Zealand for 4 months. The regiment went to New Zealand.
And what was that for, Frank? Just to
R&R,
rebuild, to
R&R,
rest up?
and get replacements and train them. Well, it was to get replacements. So we got our replacements, and then we shipped out from from New Zealand to New Caledonia, and that was for jungle training. So, because the new people come in didn't have jungle training, so we all had to take it over again, and that's the way it was. We took so many, I don't know how long we was there for a while, but in Guadalcanal, let me go back up. In Guadalcanal, we took about 3 more islands. Villa La Villa was one of them, and I can't remember. I know we took 2 and maybe 3, our regiment did. And but we cleaned all the Japanese up out of the Solomon Islands, Guadalcanal area. From there, we went, as I said, to New Zealand and got our troops, got replacements and so on and so forth of the ones that we had lost from wounds or sickness or whatever. Our strength was down, so they had to replace them. And that's the way they did it.
What kind of a ship did you go to Guadalcanal on?
An LST. Oh, my God. I got
Good
sick.
Lord.
You know, the big, I don't know if I'm saying the right one, but it's the one that it lets down, you know, in front.
That's an LST, yeah. You're right. Flat
I
bottom.
was a sick sucker.
Oh, yeah, they're terrible.
That's the only time I ever got sick in my life.
Now, did you load out of the front of it, the
Yes,
bow?
I did. When I stepped off on Villa La Villa, I went up to here.
Armpit deep in
And
the water.
my buddy from Kentucky, he's got a picture of it, me wading up through the water, but he's dead now.
This is a true story, Steve. There was an LST. The skipper thought he was close enough, and this occurred in World War II. Thought he was close enough to the beach. His ramp?
They hit rocks.
Yeah,
you know?
And he thought he was close enough and started unloading troops, and they went underwater.
Yeah.
So
Several times this happened.
Now, what kind of a ship were you on the next time, Frank? Did you
Where?
when you left New Zealand?
I don't know. I don't remember what we left, but we went to New Caledonia, like I say, and we trained there for 3 or 4 months. Took jungle training and regrouped. You know, by that time we'd been a little bit, you know, the top brass had got a little bit smarter about what we were going to do. When we started this thing, nobody knew how to fight jungle training. I guarantee you.
So then, and you all were a little more seasoned too, weren't you?
We knew a little bit more about what to do. Yes.
Where did you go from there?
From New Caledonia, we went to the Philippine Islands. And of course, this was, you know, this is a long play of time you're talking about here. You're talking about 4 years, 3 or 4 years from the time we left Hawaii until we get to the Philippine Islands, you see.
Now, was the Philippine Islands at that time, were they,
they had made a landing and they had secured Manila, but the northern, or I don't know, I don't know which part of it was, but we landed up at Lingayen Gulf in the Philippine Islands. And we took several towns and so on, so we finally wound up into a place called Belady Pass. It was a big ridge line that went through the Philippine Islands, and over on this left-hand side was a very elite type bunch of people, you know. It was like Canaan Valley thing, you know, something like that. But we were there, and we lost our commanding general there. This guy was something else. I can't even think of his name now. But anyhow, he was a second lieutenant. He was a second lieutenant, and he got that by, he was an aide to one of the generals at West Point. And so he got commissioned. He didn't go to West Point, but he got commissioned. And whenever World War II broke out, this guy was a second lieutenant. And he wound up as commanding general, as brigadier general in the Philippine Islands. So, I mean, you don't go much faster than that.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And that's not the story. I've got another one that done the same thing, only he was a West Pointer. And he done the same. He went up to regimental commander and then division commander. And,
where were you when the war ended, Frank?
Huh?
Where were you when the war ended?
What was I?
Where were you?
Philippine Islands. Well, I was home when it ended, actually. I was here in town. Excuse me. I had rotated back to the States. And at that time, you know, it was being scaled down, and the Atlantic, it was all over in Europe, and they were decreasing the strength of the military, and those people that wanted out could get out or whatever, you know, and they were down to the point that they knew that it wasn't going to last very long. I left the Philippines in July, I think, June or July of '45, and it ended in what, August or something. I just got home. Had time to get a couple of drunks.
Okay, now you went back into the service, is that right?
Oh yeah, I got out and I worked here. I worked at everything I think they had within reach of Weston, and I didn't like any of it. And like I said, I didn't want to get out of the Army when I got out.
When you went back in, Frank, did the Army give your rank back to you?
Oh yeah, Lawrence Chapman re-enlisted me.
Oh yeah, the Air Force recruiter.
Yeah.
Well, how could he get you in the Army if he was Air Force?
He was a recruiter.
Uh-huh.
At that time, he was a recruiter, and Lawrence enlisted me.
And what year was this?
1947. I stayed out 2 years, and I went back in, and I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I got up there, and they were looking. I'd always wanted to be a drill instructor. I was a staff sergeant. I was tech before, and of course I lost one stripe getting back in, you know. So I always wanted to be a DI. So I went up there, and they was looking for him, and they interviewed me and said, "Sure, we'll take you." But you know, like I said before, at that time, military wasn't brains; it was bronze, and I had two airborne. I had an airborne first sergeant, and I had an airborne field first sergeant, and they thought I was just a little kid, you know. But I was staff sergeant, so they kind of shied around me a while. They didn't give me anything. So they finally, a lieutenant heard me giving a class one day. He was a battalion instructor. He did had this battalion instructor group for all these basic training people. He heard me giving a class, and when the class was over, he came up and he said, "Sergeant Craig," he said, "would you consider coming over to battalion instructional team?" I said, "Well, yeah. I don't have any position here as far as I'm concerned, you know." So I went over there, and then after that, my field first sergeant, I was only over there about 2 months, and my field first sergeant come over and said, would you like to come back over and take second platoon next cycle? I said, yeah. I said, I'm going to get the platoon? He said, yeah. I said, that's what I want. That's what I come up here for. I didn't come up here to give instructions. I come up here to give basic training. So I went over there, and then they opened up Camp Pickett, Virginia, and I went down there as a first sergeant, Camp Pickett, Virginia. I got down there, and I wasn't cracked up about that, so that's when I re-enlisted, took a short discharge and re-enlisted and went back to the 25th Infantry Division in Japan.
Your old outfit from World War II.
Yep. And I got
Only
over
now,
there.
now you're back as a first sergeant.
No, I wasn't a first sergeant. I was a tech sergeant. But I was down at Camp Pickett, Virginia as a first sergeant.
Okay.
Of course, you know, they don't make you right off, and I wasn't down there very long. I decided I wanted to go to Japan, so to 25th Infantry Division, so that's what I done. And
Now, you're married now.
Oh, yeah.
You've got a family.
2 kids.
Now, are they living in Weston?
They were.
Or are they coming with you to Japan?
No, they stayed in Weston for a while, but, you know, you had to go over there and get them shipped over. But I happened to know, I came back on a leave, 30-day leave from Japan after a year, and I happened to know Colonel was one of the, Steve Larson's who I'm talking about. Stanley Larson, you probably heard of him, he was Major General. He was
Oh, yes.
Major General.
Yeah, I heard of him.
He was in the Pentagon as a colonel. Of course, he got reduced back, you see, after World War II. And he was in the Pentagon, and I went up there and went in, and I knew Colonel Larson real well because I had a 37 recoilless rifle gun squad in World War II, and he come over there one day with the general, and they had moving targets out there. And they had 3 or 4 people there, you know, in the company on the guns, you know, and they was trying to blow that target off the track. And so my captain said to the platoon sergeant, said, ain't you got anybody can hit the damn target? He said, Craig, get on the gun. So I got on there, first shot, I know, blew that sucker clear off. And so Colonel Larson come down and talked to me. And anyhow, you know, that's the way it was. It's,
Was it
I knew
long?
him, so I went to the Pentagon, and I told him, I said, I want a favor, Colonel. So we sat there and talked a long time, and he said, okay. Told him what I wanted. I said, I want to take my family back to Japan. He picked up the phone down in the section that issues travel orders. He told me, he said, I want you to fix up a sergeant's mine's coming down there. He said, I want him to take his wife back to Japan with him. He said, yes, sir.
Was this early 1950, Frank, or late 49?
49.
49?
1949.
Then how long was your family with you in Japan?
Well, about 6 months or 8 months, I don't know. But anyhow, he issued me orders, and I issued orders for a port call for me, and I drove to San Francisco and got on a boat. We went on the boat to Japan, and they had her and the kids down in Kyushu, whatever it is, in the island of Kyushu down there, Southern Island, and in a hotel. Of course, we were training because I think they were actually expecting something from the North Koreans for a good while. But we were there, and we had to live in a hotel for about 4 or 5 months, and then we finally got a house up in Nara, which is 60 miles away from where my barracks was. But I stayed there in the barracks in a week and went up there on a weekend. But so when Korea started, of course, we were there. As a matter of fact, we were down in Camp Drake making amphibious landings. We got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We got loaded on the ship at 4 o'clock in the morning. We were going to make a nighttime landing and a daytime landing. We were going to make 2 the same day. We got up and we went out on that ship, and made the nighttime landing, and it started breaking day, and about that time they said, "Uh-oh, no more. The North Koreans jumped over the 38th parallel. We're going back to Schofield, back to Otsu." So we packed up and went back to Otsu, and 2 days later I was in Korea.
When you were practicing those landings, Frank, were you loading up on?
We were loading up and loading down nets. You know, just the thing.
Climbing over nets on the side of the ship.
Climbing over the side of the ship.
Have you ever done that, Steve?
What? Yes, I have. What did they do with your family?
They shipped them back to States.
Immediately?
No, well, probably a month or so after we left. My wife.
So they were there without you then for a period of time. They were there without you for a short period of time then.
My wife was young, and she had 2 kids, and her and my first sergeant's wife, we had a house together. And, but because him or I, either one, were never there, you know, because we were always in the field, and we were in the field a lot, and training, and the only time we got home was on a weekend. And but anyhow, they give them the option. They were bringing troops over like mad, as you can imagine, you know, and these planes were coming back to the States empty. So they told all the dependents, now if you want to go home, get ready. We'll put you on a plane, send you home. So that's what she done. She came back to Weston.
I want to ask you this question. Were you through into combat in the Korean War?
Yeah.
Did you see combat in the Korean War?
Me?
Yes.
Did I?
Yes, sir.
I was a platoon sergeant
Oh, my.
in Korea.
So it was just as much fighting in Korea as there was in World War II for you.
Oh,
then.
yes. You know, I probably enjoyed Korea. I enjoyed combat, really. You know, people say you're an idiot. Well, maybe I am. But I did.
I understand.
But you see, let me tell you something. When I got to 35th Infantry, they didn't have only one portion of a battalion. They had key NCOs they had the 2nd Battalion organized. They didn't have anybody in the 1st Battalion, only NCOs. So what happened there was that we had to build up a regiment. We gave basic training. I just got out of basic training, given basic training, and I got there, and that was the first thing they slapped me into. They said, the colonel we had said, "I want these people to take good basic training." He called us all together, and he selected us from a record of what we'd been doing, you know. And, got about a dozen of us out there, and he said, "Now, we're getting a bunch of recruits in next week." He said, "I want you people have been selected to give them a 35th Infantry basic training, all right?" So he said, "I want them to know what soldiering is." So we took them, trained them, and of course I had my whole platoon basically was in the basic training cycle, because at that time we didn't have any recruits or any PFCs. We had corporals is all we had in the company. It was about the lowest we had. And it was just a skeleton crew. And so we gave them basic training, and these boys that I took into Korea, I go to a reunion with them every year. And I'm the old man.
How did you land in Korea, Frank? And
how did we land?
And where? Did you climb down the nets and get down the nets and go to shore in the small boats?
No, we went on Pusan. We went down Pusan. Is that the southern town down there?
On the East Coast.
Just walked off the ship. They're like, you know, the LST.
So they trucked you up there?
Huh?
You trucked up there, then, didn't you?
Yeah. We trucked up to the 38th parallel.
So Pusan was secure then?
Seoul. We're down in Seoul, Korea.
Oh, Seoul.
Yeah,
Seoul.
You know, Seoul's where the southern city, right? And so we went up then we...
Well, Frank, what was you faced with up there at the 38th parallel?
My mission, as far as my company was concerned, was we were heavy weapons, okay? So we supported the 1st Battalion, Rifle Companies, A, B, and C. Okay, I was in Dog Company, 35th Infantry. Our mission, of course, was heavy support. You can't take big 81 millimeter mortars and 75 recoilless rifles up on the front line. They are a weapon that you use for anti-tank and so on, for tanks and so on. Blowing up pillboxes, and a lot of people don't know what a pillbox is, but if you're ever in combat, I'm sure you do. You know, so that's what my mission was as far as
You
that.
had a forward observer then, didn't you?
Huh?
You had a forward observer with you, didn't you?
No, not with me. The mortar platoon had forward observers. I was on, as platoon sergeant, I was on the battalion commander's net, radio net, okay? And if they called for, if in other words, if we were making an advancement and we would get pinned down, I had my Jeeps mounted, my 75 recoilless rifles mounted on Jeeps. And I could be there in 5 minutes, no matter where it was at. And, you know, and that's the way we run them. And that's what the purpose of it was to make them mobile. When we had 3/4 ton trucks, which wasn't very mobile as far as getting you to a lot of places real quick, you know, with it in the Korean and on the Korean roads. And sometimes you didn't have roads. So. But I had all mine, most of mine mounted on Jeeps, and we put them out pretty fast.
Was that a 2 or 3 man crew, Frank, with each one of those?
A gun actually is only a 2-man crew. It's the gunner and the loader, and of course, you know, you have to have somebody to give the commands and so on and so forth.
Were you pulling a
section.
trailer?
They normally operate in a section, okay?
Okay.
And that's the reason I can't hear. You got back. You know, a 75 recoilless rifle has got as much propulsion going backwards as it has going forward in order to stabilize that gun. You know, you can set them up. You set them up on a 3-legged tripod and fire it, and it's not going to move. And that's what it was. They, after so long a time, the orfits, they have what you call an orfit in it. That's to equalize the pressure, okay, in that gun. The division ammo officer and the division ordnance officer, rather, came up because I'd wore out 2 or 3. I was down to 2 guns. And my company commander just raising the devil with him because they wouldn't get me another guns, you know. So he came up and he said, well, I don't know what you're doing to your weapons up here, but you're ruining them. He said, you've borne up more ammo and more guns than the whole 25th Infantry Division. So my colonel was there. He's a real soft-spoken old gentleman, Paul S. Dorr. And he said, I'll tell you what he's doing, Major. He's using them. And he said, we don't have to holler the second time till Sergeant Craig's there. So he said, you get him guns. So he didn't say much more about that. But Colonel Dorr, I was acting first sergeant over there for a little while. He was a real comical old fellow. And he called the first sergeant up every morning, and he'd say, hello there, chap. This is Sergeant Craig. He'd say, hello there, Sergeant Craig. Or, hello there, chap. When he got through talking to you, he'd say, okay, boy, greaser up and let her go. Bye now. He was a lieutenant colonel. He was the nicest old fellow.
He ever make any of your reunions?
Me? No, Lord, no, he's
no.
dead. He was an old man then.
How long were you in Korea?
Went in June, right? And March, June to March. March or April, I believe it was.
What years? 50?
Well, I went there in 50 and left in 51. Yeah.
What did you think of that war versus World War II?
Well, I liked it better. Well, you don't understand. Well, you're laughing, I know. It's funny to say that, right? But I liked it better because, you see, I saw the product of who I was. in my people. I trained them, and you can ask any one of them now, and you know, they say, that son of a gun taught me everything I ever knowed, good or bad. But, you know, that's the way it is. They were my product, and I didn't have that in World War II.
You had a pretty good background, though, Frank. You were trained by World War I veterans.
Yeah.
Then you had World War II experience.
Yes, I had some experience. I did very well for myself in that field. I enjoyed, like I say, I did enjoy combat.
Well, when did you muster out, Frank?
Finally, well, I retired 1964.
So you are also was in the Vietnam era too.
No, I was not in Vietnam.
But you was in the Vietnam era.
Yes. I did not go to Vietnam, but
Well, what was you knew it was getting ready to start and firing up? What was your thoughts on Vietnam? You'd already seen
I don't know what
two
to think
wars.
about Vietnam. I think that everybody has the wrong opinion of it. It was a war. It was a war that we couldn't win. Not the way things were going. If we'd have fought it right, we probably could have. If that answers your question.
You don't
I
think
don't
it was
think
fought
that-
like
I don't-
Vietnam, like Korea?
Huh?
You don't think it was fought like Korea?
I don't know how it was fought, but we didn't do, well, we didn't win Korea as far as I'm concerned, but we maintained it, okay? I think that in those days we were skeptical. I think I say the government was skeptical about getting into another world war. I don't think they even think about it now, you know, it don't matter what. But I think then, I think that the commanders were held back too much as far as I'm concerned. I think that we should have, if we were going to fight a war, fight it. You have a war to kill people. That's what we should have done.
So what were you doing, Frank, between 1951 and 1964?
19.
You came
Okay.
back from Korea? And
I came back from Korea, and I was in Walter Reed Army Hospital for a year. I got out, and I went to Baltimore as administrator in the Armed Forces Examination Station in Baltimore, Maryland. I was giving the mental exams there.
You were giving the mental exams.
To inductees, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. If you remember right, at that time we had an AFE station, Armed Forces Examination Station.
That's right, yeah,
And,
we did.
Right, and I was assigned to the one in Baltimore. And so that's what I've done there for a period of time. And
Still
then
regular Army?
yes, oh yes. I happened to know, I was acquainted with a guy in 2nd Army headquarters that did the assignments for civilian component duty. So I went up and talked to him one day, and I told him, I said, hey, I would like to get a Army Reserve Advisor position in West Virginia. So one day he called me up and he said, I got a position for you if you want to go. I was still in Baltimore. I said, where at? He said, Charleston, West Virginia. I said, yeah, I'll go. But it really wasn't Charleston. It was, they had one in Clarksburg and they had one in Wheeling. And I'd gotten there 2 days late to get the one in Clarksburg, so they sent me to Wheeling. But I was up there for a couple of years. And then the position came open here in Weston for an advisor, and I took that position there. And I stayed there for about 5 or 6 years. But I was a master sergeant, and I couldn't go anywhere. And at that time they had came out with the E8s and the E9s in the Army. And I just was a master sergeant, you know, and I was ready to go on. So I happened to get hold of this same guy in 2nd Army headquarters, and he knew a friend that was doing the assignments to Europe, and I told him I wanted to go to Europe. And he told me, he said, send me a 1049. So I sat down and made up a 1049, sent it up there, and they sent that same 1049 to Heidelberg, and the Inspector General got a hold of it and read it, and he was wanting somebody as a chief clerk because the Army Inspector General had gigged him in the last 3 times in the last 3 years for their own headquarters. And that didn't go over very good. So he told him, sent the papers back over to headquarters and told him to sign him to Inspector General Division headquarters, right here.
And you got the job.
I got the job. And I walked in there and...
That must have opened up rank for you then, Frank.
Well, I'm going to tell you about it.
Okay.
I was there about 6 months, and they had, when I got there, they had a retired Lieutenant Colonel rift. Lieutenant Colonel, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, sure do.
He had been riffed back to a tech sergeant. Well, they wouldn't make him.
He'd been riffed back to a tech sergeant.
Oh, yes.
That's what happened to me.
That's exactly right. And they wouldn't make him E9. But anyhow, they called me in, and this colonel that was in charge of the Inspector General Division told me, he said, Sergeant, when I got there, I reported in to him, and he said, Sergeant, he said, I read your background, and he said, I think I like what I read, and he said, I decided that we're going to try you out. He said, we're going to put you in there as chief clerk of this division. And he said, if you are the man that I think you are, he said, there is an E9 position waiting here for you. I said, Colonel, that's what I came to Europe for. I didn't make no bones about it because I put it into my application.
Right.
That I'm stalemated here. I can't go anywhere. I feel if I have an opportunity, I'll make what I want, and that's an E9. So anyhow.
Now, what was your present rank at that time that we're talking about? Were you at
Master Sergeant.
Were you an E7 Master Sergeant
E7
or
Master
E8?
E7. They didn't have them.
Then in essence, you actually jumped a rank, didn't you, Frank?
I did all right. What happened was they had not upgraded this table of distribution, and that is not a TE, table of organization. It is
right.
Table of distribution. Okay, they had not upgraded that from a Master Sergeant to an E9 because they didn't have anybody that they wanted to promote. The colonel didn't. But after about 3 or 4 months, I was there, and he said, now, Sergeant, he said, you can put the paperwork in to upgrade the TD for an E9 position. He said, I've decided that you can handle what I'm looking for. So I did, put it in, and it come back, and so I'm automatically made E8 this next month. And then the regulations said you had to be an E8 for 18 months before you can make E9. But the colonel wavered that. And so I made E9 in less than a year later. So I decided that's what I wanted. That's what I went to Europe for. And I finished my tour in Europe and had a wonderful time. And Army is not all bad.
Well, also the Army, it didn't have the technical rank for E9. Then you went to Sergeant Major then.
Well, E9, Sergeant Major is E9.
And that's the highest ranking non-commissioned.
That's correct.
So that's just like being a general.
Yeah, that's what the colonel told me when he gave it to me. You know, he said, now, Sergeant, he said, you can feel like that you've accomplished a 4-star general situation. I said, yes, sir, Colonel Loveness, I do.
Not too bad for a boy from University of San
With a 9th grade education.
Well, folks.
But you see, here I had to go. I knew the requirements for an E9, so I went to Elkins and took a GED test, so I got a high school diploma. See, and that's the only way that you could do it.
Frank, one year I was aboard a ship going. We were going to stop off in Japan. We had a lot of Army high enlisted men aboard, and one was a sergeant major. And I was talking with him on the port side of the ship, and he told me that he wasn't sure if he's going to be the sergeant major of his new outfit or not. He said if there was a sergeant major already there, then he would go back to tech sergeant. So your rank.
I don't know how they figure. He figured that.
Well, he said it went by the billet.
Well, I don't know. I never was in that position.
Your rank
any
was
way.
permanent then when you made
Huh?
it. Your rank was permanent when you made it.
Well, no. It's not permanent for 2 years. But I did retire with a permanent E9. I retired as Sergeant Major of the Army Missile Command in Huntsville, Alabama.
Hate to be in part of his story, Steve, but he and I have a lot in common. I quit high school in the 10th grade, and so my highest grade completed in school was the 9th grade. Actually, it put me in 11th grade, but I quit again. But I didn't even finish the 10th grade, so I had the 9th grade behind me. I retired as an E9 in the Marine Corps.
Well, for a couple of country boys, we done pretty good.
Not bad at all, Frank, not bad at all.
Our guest today has been Frank Craig, retired as a non-com general, attended the University of Sanford, and folks, I'm right proud of him. John, I'm glad that you set this interview up.
Well, I'm just glad to be part of it, Steve. But I have to add this. There's a lot more to Frank Craig's story.
Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But, you know, WWII Korean. Got
It's a combat infantry badge right there on the front.
Right there on the front. Well, Frank, now give us some parting words here. This right here is a...
You don't know what them are.
Let me add this for Frank. Not only, Steve, we have a combat infantry badge with the star. We have the Silver Star, which is the third highest award. It's the third highest award in the Marine Corps.
Right.
The only thing above that is the Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
He also has, beside this, is a Bronze Star Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Now we're talking about 4 Bronze Stars. Am I right, Frank?
Right.
4 Bronze Stars. Frank, I'm proud of you, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Frank,
And
what
I-
advice would you give people now?
Let me add this, Steve. I've had people tell me they would rather have this combat infantry badge than lots of other things. A lot of people can't get it.
Finish this interview with give us a little advice on your take on life and what you might have changed if you could have changed something. Would you have?
No, like I told you a little bit ago, I did my changes as I went along. I decided in 1947 that I wanted to go back in the military. Like I said, I feel like I've done real well for a little old country boy. I made a decent living for my family. I enjoyed it. I've done what I wanted to do. I got a pretty good retirement, and I'm happy with my life. When you can do what you want to do, make a living at it, and be happy, I don't know what more you can ask for.
Again, Frank, we're very honored to have you here, and I hope we see you again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Maybe next Pearl Harbor Day you give us another call.
Well, I'll be in Orlando.
That means we're going to have to call him down.
Well, it looks that way.